I think he's just saying.
We'll get there. we'll get there. He's going to ultimately be so what he's going to do is contrast noble morality, right? So the noble system of moral valuation, which is rooted in the distinction between good and bad, where all the distinction means is high and low, privileged, unprivileged.
It's comparative, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's all it is in our world is comparative.
That's right. But there are different bases for it. There's going to be a transformation, right? So noble morality. What I want to do now, I want to talk about what Nietzsche calls noble morality, okay? And the morality that's based on the distinction between good and bad, right? So again, this means high and low, privileged, not privileged, favored, disfavored. Person with power, right? Dominator, dominated. Okay, you could cash this out in a whole variety of ways. This is the origin of the meaning of these terms. That's Nietzsche's point. So when we look at our baseline, the meaning of like moral terms, the basis for all moral distinctions, good, bad. Well, that language has its basis in class division, okay? So where do we think this distinction came from? And so now I want to talk about some of the features of noble morality, and that may be all the time we have. But I want to talk about some of the features of noble morality, and I want to start that discussion by asking you the following question. Who came up with this distinction? Where did the distinction between good and bad come from? Who imposed that distinction? Because somebody did. Yeah, Heather.
The noble, or those who would have been good.
That's right. That's right. The nobles imposed this distinction. They created the distinction, right? Why else would you create a distinction? Well, of course, to benefit yourself. That's a good reason to to make a distinction, right? So there's a certain.
Are you convinced by that? Like personally, do you find that convincing? I don't personally find that convincing. I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know. I feel like.
Well, I don't find it ethically convincing.
I just don't understand why he stops at language. I don't know why he's not asking himself why language developed that way, or like for some reason I just can't help but think about like way back in the state of nature, we're talking about who has more ability to survive. You know, so then the more noble would be the people, for example, who had an abundance of resources and were able, like if you've got a bunch of food next to you, you can sit around and eat. But if you don't, then you have to go out and hunt and starve, and that kind of lifestyle is worse, you know, or less enjoyable than those who have more. And then I feel like that's where the class division came. It was like further back in language, it was talking about like comparative humans, like who is better off surviving than someone else. I guess I don't know that that's relevant, but I just don't, I feel like he's got this like class division going on, like he wants to see it almost. I don't know, I'm just not fully convinced by that.
So you think we could continue to dig, in other words, there's some pre-linguistic moral.
Pre-linguistic.
Well, so maybe as a definitional matter, it's not moral behavior. I mean, in other words, these are just acts of force or brutality or something like this.
Okay, and then this is what I thought. So, like, if you have an affordable lifestyle, right? If you are a human that has a bunch of resources around you, you're more likely to do what are considered good things or generous things, right? Or you're going to have more time as a human to think about what morality means. And so
but I don't think Nietzsche disagrees with your contrast.
I'm just saying his source is different. It's like, I guess it's very finessed. I'm just like, okay, yeah, at this point, but you gotta open this little door and go back a little bit more, you know? But I don't know.
Well, I mean, we could go back further than you did. I mean, if you really want to go back, you could go back to which cells were biologically superior and turned into, you know.
That's different though, because that's like, so in order to be a moral agent, what is required? Because then if you're talking about that, you have to ask that question at that point, because you're transitioning from a person who has perhaps an ability to be conscious to something that doesn't have a consciousness, which most people require a moral agent to be conscious.
But you're assuming that
agent.
Instincts were not the main driving factor before language development.
I'm saying they were.
But then it's not morality, is it?
Well, he's saying the basis for morality is language, and I'm saying the basis for language is something else. And he's saying he stopped at language, and I'm saying go back to
I think.
I'm just not convinced by his argument.
Mhm.
Not convinced.
Well,
Most people aren't, but the one point that gets me.
So I think it's an excellent objection, and so Nietzsche's got a kind of, he's going to continue to deepen out this account because he understands. I think he's more of the way to where you're going than you maybe think he is, right? So what he's done is said that the language that we need to pay attention to is the language of, right, like good and bad. We need to go back and recover the original meanings of those concepts, right? And if we do that, we're going to see they have totally different valences than the valences that we impose on them now in the 19th century. Now, there is going to be a pre-linguistic basis for human behavior, human nature. He's going to find actually language itself is just an expression of this kind of protean, what he calls the will to power. Everything comes from the will to power, right? Including our language. And so it's not surprising. He says this is in us, this is in animals, but it's really in human beings. We want to dominate. We want to see our power, our potency expressed out in the world. Well, one way to do that, one thing that makes the human animal a little bit differently is that we have language, we have concepts, and so this becomes one channel, one mode of expression for our will to power. And right, what better way to express power than to create concepts that other people internalize? We can control people when we're not even there if we put stuff in their heads, right? So language is this incredible tool of making other people instruments of your will, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so we're gonna dig that out. That's a great question, though. You're way out in front of us. Okay, good. Okay, so we're talking about noble morality and its features. Okay, one thing that pops into my head right away that strikes me, and Nietzsche emphasizes this, is that noble morality is the source of its own value. In other words, the distinction between good and bad comes from where? The person making the distinction. I'm good, you're bad. Maybe the person who says, why? Right? The person who's you're bad. Why am I bad? Because I said so, right? Noble morality is not a complicated morality. It's not a deep morality, right? But it is a self-affirming morality. It's a morality that expresses and creates its own value. So in that sense, it's active. Okay, it's an active morality. It's an assertive morality, right? It's not defensive. This is an offensive morality. Okay, this is good. Best defense is a good offense. That's what the practitioner of noble morality believes. It's an active morality, right? It also, Nietzsche says that it's healthy. He says that it's healthy to live this way. It's bad to keep things stored up inside. It's bad to repress your instincts. It's bad to tell yourself, no, don't hurt that person. Don't push that little kid down and take his money. Don't do that. Well, maybe I want to do that, right? Maybe I want that money. Maybe I just want to teach the kid a lesson, right? Maybe I just want to do it because I can. Nietzsche says it's actually healthy. This kind of, what you do is you vent your feeling and then it's gone, right? It's better than hanging on to it, right? Then when you hang on to it, when you repress it, it stays inside. And when it stays inside, it becomes poisonous, okay? So we have an active morality. We have a healthy morality. That's not to say you don't have self-control, but it is to say that you don't deny or repress your instincts. This is a morality based on self-assertion, not on self-repression.
But
What? Yeah.
I mean, like, I know that, like, I'm very swayed by culture and all of that. But, like, I just don't see how, like, you know, beating my children or, you know, like, beating your wife or something is a healthy... I mean, I would disagree that, like, you know, as a nanny, of course, I have moments where I'd love to strangle the children. But, like, I don't, and then the feelings go away eventually. It's not like because I've gone this long without strangling a 5-year-old, I have this intense urge building up in me to strangle a 5-year-old. It's just when they're, like, throwing things at me.
Okay.
So in Nietzsche's view, no one would consider themselves bad. Like it's like always subjective, and you're always kind of on the good side. Like kind of a pretty, it works out pretty well for everyone. But
It doesn't work out well for everybody. People who are bad understand that they're bad. They don't like it.
So he's saying that like people who are called bad will self-reinforce the bad. Like it's more of a cultural like.
And yes, and that's important because this becomes the origin of slave morality.
Okay.
He talks about a transvaluation of values, right?
What was it, like a self-fulfilling prophecy idea?
How so?
Well, like, you know, we create definitions of good or bad and create exclusionary distinctions in morality, and then people are told that they are on a certain side of morality or have a certain, you know, good or bad instinct about them, and then they behave in ways that reflect that. Or does he not take it to that level?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think that dynamic is certainly there, right? That morality has a self-perpetuating character. Most creations do. You know, most things do. But I think he understands that character a little bit differently. I mean, he sees noble morality as the spontaneous consequence or product of something close to natural human impulses. Okay? This is what human beings want to do. This is just what we want to do. Everything inside of us that tells us that we don't want to do that, that's from society, that's from slave morality, that's from Christianity, that's from democracy, that's from this long history of moral transformation. He says we need to go back to the beginning and we'll see that it didn't bother people to be cruel. I mean, if you think about the classical world and the stuff they would do, we're going to get into a history of punishment in the second book. People loved torture. People loved hurting others.
Okay, Megan, aren't there parts of our brain that like light up that are like empathetic, like parts of our brain chemistry? So she's a biology major.
She's a psychology major.
So she's also biology.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. But I mean, there are also parts of our brain that light up when we harm others, right? I mean, that also stimulates the brain. Right? Nietzsche doesn't deny that there's compassion, that there's pity, he doesn't deny any of that, right? But he just says that we've repressed all of our other instincts and that has negative consequences for us. And the moral system that is based on instinctual repression is a poisonous and a sickening system. Yes.
Would he say that you have an obligation to yourself to be yourself? Would it be framed as an obligation? Like you have a duty?
No.
It wouldn't. It's
No.
not
that the language of duty is just it's not a language
Maybe
that
I've
Nietzsche.
been brainwashed by my traditional philosophy
you have.
because morality is always like duty, obligation. Those are the first things I think of when I think of morality.
That's
modern.
That's part of the history of moral concepts that we need to understand as history, right? It's not built into the structure of nature, right? These duties don't come from God. They don't come from, the noumenal self like Kant says. They don't, right? No. there's a history here. This is a product of culture. This is a product of social development. This is a there's a causal sequence here, and that's how to understand all this kind of stuff. Well, y'all are kind of.
Oh my God! Did I just do what those old English people did? Did I use like?
No.
I feel like the old English frogs. I don't know. Because then utility developed, and then I just.
You're like duty.
So embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing. No. Okay. So.
Easy to do, I guess.
So we're out of time. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna come back after the break on what, Tuesday? Yeah. So we're gonna come back on Tuesday after the break, and we're gonna talk about. I want to finish this contrast between slave and noble morality, and then we'll get into as much of book 2 as we can. But the slave-noble morality contrast is really important. So we're going to come back and finish up with that, and then start talking about guilt.